Acts chapter 22, verse 22. And it reads, they listened to him up to this statement, and then they raised their voices and said, away with such a fellow from the earth, for he should not be allowed to live. And as they were crying out and throwing off their cloaks and tossing dust into the air, the commander commanded him to be brought into the barracks, stating that he should be examined by scourging so that he might find out the reason why they were shouting against him that way. Verse 25, but when they stretched him out with thongs, Paul said to the centurion who was standing by, is it lawful for you to scourge a man who is a Roman and uncondemned? When the centurion heard this, he went to the commander and told him, saying, what are you about to do? For this man is a Roman. The commander came and said to him, tell me if you are a Roman. And he said, yes. Verse 28, the commander answered, I acquired this citizenship with a large sum of money. And Paul said, but I was actually born a citizen. Therefore, those who were about to examine him immediately let go of him. And the commander also was afraid when he found out that he was a Roman, and because he had put him in chains. But on the next day, wishing to know for certain why he had been accused by the Jews, he released him and ordered the chief priests and all the council to assemble, and brought Paul down and set him before them. Paul, looking intently at the council, said, brethren, I have lived my life with perfectly good conscience before God up to this day. The high priest Ananias commanded those standing beside him to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, God is going to strike you, you whitewashed wall. Do you sit and try me according to the law, and in violation of the law order me to be struck? But the bystander said, do you revile God's high priest? And Paul said, I was not aware, brother, that he was a high priest, for it was written, you shall not speak evil of the ruler of the people. Verse 6, but perceiving that one group were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, Paul began crying out in the council, brethren, I am a Pharisee, a son of a Pharisee. I am on trial for the hope and resurrection of the dead. And as he said this, there occurred a dissension between the Pharisees and Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. For the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, nor angel, nor spirit, but the Pharisees acknowledge them all. And there occurred a great uproar, and some of the scribes and Pharisee party stood up and began to argue heatedly, saying, we find nothing wrong with this man. Suppose a spirit or an angel has spoken to him. And as a great dissension was developing, the commander was afraid Paul would be torn to pieces by them, and ordered the troops to go down and take him away from them by force and bring him into the barracks. May the Lord bless his word. You may be seated. On last week, Brother Domain started this sermon in Acts chapter 22. He entitled it, The Life Applications from Paul's Testimony. Paul, of course, is here in Jerusalem, and he is basically going to give his testimony. Now, early on, Paul was told by God that you're going to suffer many things for my sake. And now Paul is bound here in Jerusalem, and he is suffering for the sake of Christ. Now, as we read this, it just seems pretty self-explanatory. Paul is giving his testimony to these Jews. But there have been some things that we can pull from his testimony, amen. As you can see in your bulletin, Domain hit 5 points on last week. Life applications from Paul's testimony. The first was, religion does not reconcile us to God. verses 3 through 5. Religion does not reconcile us to God. Secondly, salvation is by God's grace. All of us who are saved can look back at our lives and we can testify, along with Paul, that we are saved by grace. It is not because we were so good. It is not because we're better than the rest. It is only because of his grace that we are saved. Amen? And the third principle that we pulled was before he commissions us, he corrects us. Amen? There's often some cleaning up God has to do. Even though we come to Christ just as we are, before he sends us out into the world, he cleanses our hearts. Amen? And he does continually sanctify us as he cleans our hearts and our minds so that we would represent him in this dying world. The fourth principle was baptism is an important confession of our faith. Paul, following the model of Jesus, was baptized, publicly identifying with the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And then, lastly, he concluded by saying salvation is for God's purposes. When God saved Paul, he saved him on purpose and with a purpose. Amen? And when God saved you on purpose and with a purpose. Amen? And that brings us to our text this morning. We look at verse 22. Paul's words expose Jewish prejudice. Paul's words expose Jewish prejudice in verses 22 and verses 23. Now, if you remember in let's go back to verse 20. It says, let me go back a little bit further. Verse 19, it says, and I said, Lord, they themselves understand that in one synagogue, now Paul is giving his testimony right now, and he says, and I said, Lord, they themselves understand that in one synagogue after another, I used to imprison and beat those who believe in you. Paul is reminding these Jews of his heritage. He has already done some name dropping. When he began speaking in verse 1, he spoke in the Hebrew dialect. He dropped the name of Gamaliel, who was a Jew, a well-known teacher in the Jewish sect of Pharisaism. And Paul was schooled under Gamaliel. So he had the highest professor that was teaching him. So Paul is identifying with his lineage and his background. And so it says in verse 20, and when the blood of your witness Stephen was being shed, I was standing by approving and watching out for the coats of those who were slaying him. And so they're listening to this testimony that Paul is giving. And then at the end in verse 21, it says, and he said to me, Paul saying, God said to me, go, for I will send you far away to the Gentiles. Now, if you remember from verse 22, verse 1, all the way up until now, Paul is giving his testimony, and they are giving ear to what Paul is saying. They're paying attention because Paul gathered their attention because he spoke in Hebrew. He wanted them to know that he was a Jew. He had a Jewish heritage. And then all hell broke loose. They're listening to his testimony and everything is okay. It's pro-Jew. But now Paul says something in verse 21 that changes things. He says, and God said to me, go, for I will send you far away to the Gentiles. Paul's words expose Jewish prejudice. And so you might ask, well, what is wrong with this? Because Paul obviously was told by God that you are going to preach the gospel to the Gentiles. Now, as you know, everywhere that Paul went on his missionary journeys, he always went to the synagogues first. Because Paul was a Jew. He loved Jews. He had a heart for the Jews. He was always there dealing with the Jews. But Paul was commissioned to go and speak and preach the gospel to the Gentiles. They listened to him up to this statement, and then they raised their voices and said, "Away with such a fellow from the earth, for he should not be allowed to live." Now, you just imagine you giving your testimony of all that God had done in your life, and now you're standing, you've got an audience, and you give your testimony. We do testimony services every now and then. When was the last time after your testimony you heard somebody say, "Oh, baby, you ought to die"? Paul gives his testimony, and they says, "Listen, this away with this fellow. He shouldn't be allowed to live." Why would they say that? Well, because they're basically saying, "Paul, we know that we're okay with you being a Jew, and we're all right with your testimony, but the reality is you're not instructing them to be a part of Judaism and the Judaistic institution." You see, they were more concerned about the institution of Judaism than they were about Gentiles being saved. When God told Paul to go to the Gentiles, he was actually putting the Jews and the Gentiles on equal footing, and the Jews didn't like that. They wanted you to have to go through their Jewish system in order to be engrafted into the body of Christ. And so they say, "No, this cannot be a man of God. He shouldn't be allowed to live." So their prejudices are exposed. They raised their voices and said, "Away with such a fellow from the earth. He should not be allowed to live." And as they were crying out, verse 23, these folk are serious. Listen. As they were crying out and throwing off their cloaks and tossing dust into the air, they are not only angry, they're belligerent. They are beside themselves, because this man has the audacity to say that God has actually sent him to the Gentiles. Do you understand that the Gentiles were not a secondary thought in God's mind? From the very beginning, it was always God's heart for the gospel to go to not only the Jews. The Jews were to be the carrier of the gospel to the Gentiles, but they rejected Christ. But in God's sovereign plan, he had something in line for the Gentiles, that they might receive the gospel of Jesus Christ. Not being grafted into the Judaistic system, but being a part of the ecclesia, the church. And it says, and they were crying out and throwing off their cloaks and tossing dust into the air. The commander ordered him to be brought into the barracks, stating that he should be examined by scourging, so that he might find out the reason why they were shouting against him that way. Which brings me to point number 2, or that would be number 7. That is Paul's words. We said expose Jewish prejudice, and then in 7, Paul's examination is curtailed. I want you to notice something. Paul is actually following the same pattern that Jesus followed. Paul, just as Jesus was addressed by the Jewish council, Paul, just as Jesus was addressed by the Roman governor, and he too is being addressed by the king, a Jewish king. And so in verse 24, this commander says he ordered him to be brought into the barracks, because ultimately Rome didn't want any chaos going on in Rome. They didn't want an uproar. And so he says the commander ordered him to be brought into the barracks.